Hello everyone. So in this video, I want to talk about attachment. So in the previous video, we talked about desire. And in the previous video, I believe I presented a view about desire which is completely different than the way it is usually told. So usually desire is presented as this idea of something we crave, something we want to go towards too. It implies the idea of action, effort, movement, craving, lack of. So you desire because you feel that you lack. All this nonsense. And I will explain why it is nonsense. Now, desire is something instinctive we have in us, and it's actually what allows us to survive. So we desire to eat, we desire to drink, we desire to sleep, and in the morning we also desire to wake up. Those desires, they kind of move us, they make us move, they force us to action. But for some reason, there is an idea, there is like a kind of trend, like a spiritual trend, that desire is bad, which I believe comes from a misinterpretation of the original doctrine of Buddhism. This idea that action is bad and inaction is the ideal outcome. So we kind of glorify people that do the least, like think about the monk that spent all his day meditating. We consider this is amazing. So because there is no movement, there is no thought. If he can meditate successfully, he can probably prevent his own mind from thinking. So we kind of glorify inactivity as if there was something valuable in this inactivity. And we kind of punish or at least oppose or criticize action or the desire for action by arguing that it's like a craving, it implies that we feel that we lack something. So why does he desire this? Does he feel that he's lacking something? Or why put all this effort? Why put all this energy or whatever? But I mean, of course, everyone will have had different experiences. But I think we can see that there is a tendency in spirituality, whatever that means, to try to go towards inaction. The idea of inaction as a good thing. Inaction as something to pursue, meditation or being calm, like no emotions, no action, no thought. Lack is considered, well, not lack as if something is missing, but the not doing is considered good. So the less you do, the better. The less you desire, the better. The more inactive you are, the better. It's kind of considered like holy in this trend of spirituality to be inactive. So, oh my God, these monks spend 10 hours a day praying. That's amazing. Like that's what people will say. But why exactly? And why isn't that a form of desire anyway? I mean, what about someone that desires to meditate? I mean, isn't that desire? Or someone that desires to not have thoughts or desires to be calm or desire not to have emotion? I mean, what exactly this has to do with desire anyway? Again, maybe there is some core in the sense that desire is connected with action and we kind of glorify inaction. And so we come to some sort of conclusion that desire is bad and we assume that inaction is better, but it's not really possible because we are alive. So in my opinion, it doesn't make much sense. So what I proposed in the previous video is that I think it makes a lot more sense to understand desire as judgment. So kind of the desire that things were different is the judgment we apply on reality. The desire for things to be different. So I break my leg and maybe I say to myself, I shouldn't have broke my leg. And this is the judgment. And this would be, I think, what desire means in the context of the four and five fetters. But now I want to look at attachment. So attachment is closely connected to desire. The idea will be that desire is when you don't have the thing. Some people will call it craving and you want to go towards the thing. Of course, the issue with craving is that it has a negative connotation, but this is kind of stupid. It's actually a judgment because you crave food. So what? If you don't eat, you die. You crave water. Well, if you don't drink, you die. You crave sleep. Well, if you're tired, you need to sleep. Already the word craving is kind of a word with a heavy negative connotation, which implies a judgment. Desire means that you want something. So desire implies moving towards something. You don't have it, you want it. Now, what is attachment? I think attachment will be the other side of the coin for desire. It means that you now have it and you don't want to lose it. So in desire, you don't have it and you want to gain it. In attachment, you have it and you don't want to lose it. So presented like this, those will be very similar. I mean, they are strongly connected. So one is you want the thing and one is you don't want to lose the thing once you have it. But again, I also think that this doesn't make any sense. So, of course, you are attached to things that are valuable for your survival. You're attached to your health. I mean, if someone is not attached to their health, they will not live long. You're attached to your money, and for a good reason, because if you lose all your money, you will probably not be able to afford food or healthcare. You would probably not live long. So, of course, we are attached to things that are good for us and are good for our survival. I mean, we would be kind of crazy not to be. So, in any way, who of those gurus really just throw away all their money and do whatever they can to get sick? No one does that. This idea of attachment intended as the other side of the coin of desire, it doesn't really make sense. It's kind of stupid. I mean, maybe it sounds nice at first sight, but once we think about it, it's kind of obvious that it doesn't make any sense. So I'm trying to make a distinction here. I'm saying that certain attachments are very healthy. It's healthy to be attached to your health, I mean, to the integrity of your body, to your money to some extent, to your property. You don't want to lose those things. Your life depends on it. So it's a healthy attachment. So what will be then an unhealthy attachment? Because I think that's where the distinction is, healthy versus unhealthy attachment. So what will be an unhealthy attachment? I will give one example and we will continue elaborating in this direction. So in traditional Buddhism, there is the eighth fetter, which is identity. So what is identity? Well, I will say the reality is no one knows exactly what is identity. It's a very tricky question to answer. Who are we or what are we? It's difficult because it could be many things and those things could also not be. So we could say we are our body, but we are not really so sure. Like if you lose your hand, is it still you? Well, yes. So you could say we are our brain, but even our brain changes. So plus some people may believe like in afterlife, some not. So of course, if you believe in afterlife, then you are not your brain, or you're not your body. So no one really knows the answer. I mean, there is no answer. What we know for sure, let's say we can identify a minimum common denominator of identity. And that will be, I think we can call it the point of view. So yes, we have kind of a unique point of view on reality. So I have my point of view, and everyone watching this video has their own point of view. So we see the reality, we experience reality through a specific point of view, kind of like a sub-reality, like a mini reality. So let's say within some reality, whatever reality means, then there are sub-realities, which would be the point of view, the different points of view of that reality. I mean, we cannot really deny that because it's obvious that I am me in the sense that I see the world from this perspective. And every person watching this video, you guys are watching the video from your own perspective. So there are different points of view. And this is reasonable. I mean, one will have to be completely unreasonable to deny this obvious fact, which we actually experience directly. So I always experience reality through my point of view. I never experience reality through someone else's point of view. There is no point trying to delude myself or force myself to think that I experience reality through some other point of view. And every one of you is also experience reality through their own point of view. So that we could call identity if we want. I mean, at the end, we are just giving a name to something we experience, but we could call it identity. So this kind of minimum common denominator, the thing that you cannot remove, the absolute core essence of identity, the point of view. And this is healthy because once we think about this starting point, this seed of identity, or this core element that we can call identity, when we think about this, we can then build and develop boundaries. So for example, I don't want someone to hurt me. So if someone approaches me with a knife, I will try to stop them. I want to protect my body. Now, it's not that my body is my identity, but it is a significant part of my experience. So I will kind of set a boundary around my body and say, no, you cannot stab me. Or if someone wants to, let's say, to steal my money, I will say, well, yeah, I mean, I don't really know if that name and date of birth and whatever is me, is my identity, but that's my bank account. And hey, I would rather that there is money in my bank account than not. So I will set a boundary. I will not allow people to steal from me. So saying, for example, there is no identity doesn't really make sense. I mean, there is, of course, an identity as in our point of view, our unique point of view of a reality. And starting from this point of view, a healthy idea of identity is to set boundaries. So this is my body, not your body. You cannot do whatever you want with my body. This is my money, it's not your money. You cannot do whatever you want with my money. This is my house, not your house. Now, of course, we understand that most of those things are social constructs. What does it mean it's my house? It means that somewhere in some registry there is my name associated to that house. And that if some random person enters that house, I can call the police and the police will check in the registry that this house is actually mine, and then they will kick out or arrest the thief. Same for the bank account. So those are social constructs, but still they affect experience. And so we usually want to set boundaries. We don't want other people, let's say, to kind of ruin our experience. So we don't want people to take our money, take our house, or harm our body. But not because we believe that this is our identity in some sort of strict sense, just because it affects our experience. So we set boundaries that we then try to enforce around what could affect our experience. This is kind of the idea. So there is an element which for sure, there is this absolute core element of identity, which is the unique point of view. And then this unique point of view is kind of associated to some extent, and maybe only temporarily, with things like our body, our property, our relationships, etc., etc. And so we try to set boundaries around those, not because we believe this is us, but just because it makes the experience more enjoyable to have those things than not have them. So we set boundaries around them to prevent people from taking them. So what is instead the unhealthy part of identity? The identity can also be stories, just like in what I was saying in the other video about desires. The identity can be stories. So the unhealthy side of identity is when we start to tell ourselves story about what we are. So instead of just observing that there is a unique point of view and there are factors that can affect our experience around which we want to put boundaries, that would be the healthy part. The unhealthy part is the part where we build stories. So we say, I am this kind of person. So usually it's story about our identity, story that we seek to defend. So we kind of build like a persona. We kind of build a mask that we wear and we forget it's a mask. We build a character and we give him stories. We give stories to this character. Stories about maybe he's brave or he's smart or he's a good person or he's courageous. And then we get attached to those ideas. So we get the real attachment that is unhealthy and is a fabrication, is a story and is limiting and is a source of suffering, is the attachment to ideas of identity. So we get attached to certain ideas about who we are. So one could be attached to the idea that he's rich, that he's powerful, that he's smart, that he's right. We get attached to our opinions. We get attached to the outcomes of our decisions. So the issue is not being attached to very reasonable things that make our experience better, like our health, our time also. We rather do what we want with our time, or our money, or our property. Of course, we're attached to those. It's logical. Why would we lose things that can improve our experience? The issue with attachment is when we get attached to, usually to identity, to specific stories that we tell ourselves about our identity. So let's take an example. This is a funny example. So let's imagine a monk. A monk has renounced everything. He renounced his money, he renounced his property, and is going to live in a monastery and meditate all day long. Now this monk is now attached, so he lost, of course, those things, kind of lost his healthy attachments. And now he's attached to something completely unhealthy. What is it? Well, now he's attached to an idea about his identity. Now he's going to build a story in his mind that by doing those things, by renouncing certain things, by giving away his property and becoming a monk and meditating all day long, he's going to build a story that he's spiritually superior, he's a good guy, he has a big heart, he's a holy person. He's not like the others, those guys attached to material things. He's seeking spiritual truths. So he's going to build a story, an identity of him as something, him as some superior person, some better person, some person that is doing what is worthwhile and not what is useless, someone who is highly spiritual, someone who meditates 10 hours a day, and then he will look down on people that meditate only 5 hours a day. So he will construct an idea of identity. He will tell himself a story about what his identity is. And then he will get attached to that story. And if for any reason he loses that story, it will be a big source of suffering. So let's say that one day he realized that, I don't know, he's not so holy after all. I don't know, it could be anything, but let's say after many, many years of just meditation and whatever, he realized that he really craves, I don't know, whatever, something, some delicious meal or sex, or maybe just having fun, going to a concert. And then it's like, oh my God, so all that stuff I did was for nothing. And then he will put into question his whole identity. So wait, I was not spiritually superior. I was not better than other people. I was not on the right path. I was not doing the important things. That identity can fall apart because it is just the result of a fabrication. So this is the real attachment. The real attachment is the fabrication of a story, usually associated with identity. So it's a story about who we are. So we build a story about who we are, and then we aggressively defend that story. So we feel that if someone is attacking that story, they are attacking us. They are attacking our identity. So if we believe, for example, that the most important thing is to meditate all the time and to have no possessions, if someone criticizes this or debate why it's not true, we will feel attacked. We will feel that our identity is being put into question. Our existence is being threatened because we feel we are this thing. Now I'm using those extreme examples, but it can be anything. It can be a guy that is really attached to the idea of being smart. So he has built his identity that he's smart. And then if he makes a mistake or something goes wrong, that could lead to a lot of suffering because he will feel like his identity is being attacked. Or some guy has built a lot of story about how he's rich and successful, and that's his identity. But what if something goes wrong and then he loses his money or his success? Then he will see, oh, actually I'm a failure. So he will switch from one identity to the other. But why? Why do we need to fabricate stories around our identity to say we are this, we are that, we are successful, we are failures, we are smart, we are dumb, we are morally superior, we are morally inferior, we are spiritually superior, spiritually inferior, we are better than others, we are less good than others? Anything like this. Why do we have to build those stories about our identity and then get attached to it and feel threatened when someone attacks those stories? There is no reason because those are just stories. So this is the real attachment. The person that believes that renunciation is very important to achieve some kind of spiritual path, and they believe that anyone who doesn't do it, they are just fools, and he has seen the truth. Those are the people with the real unhealthy attachment. The one that have built a story that produce an attachment to identity. There is nothing wrong with being attached to things that are useful for our survival, to things that are convenient to us. Actually, it's important to have a proper sense of identity intended as setting proper boundaries. We don't want to let other people abuse us. So we have to set proper boundaries to, let's say, defend the quality of our experience. So we have this unique point of view of a reality, which gives us a certain experience, a certain perspective on maybe some more generic experience or reality. And this unique perspective is affected. This unique experience is affected by certain things like our health, our body, our money, our possessions, stuff like this. And so we of course want to defend those things, but not because it's good or bad, just because why would we lose things that make our experience better? It doesn't make sense, especially if we lose them for stories. So if someone is going to give away, let's say, all his possessions in exchange for a story that makes him morally superior, and now he becomes attached to the idea of being morally superior because he gave away all his possessions to prove to who knows what, to some guy, that he's not attached, that's incredibly foolish. So you kind of trade a useful and healthy attachment towards something useful that can improve the quality of your experience to just tell yourself a story. a story about your identity, to fabricate, make up a story, and then get attached to the story and just live in the story and for the sake of the story. So all your actions will be dictated by the story. So now you will have to do whatever it takes to prove yourself and others that you are more holy than others, that you are more pious, you are more renunciate, you are more whatever, you are better than them, or you are truly this, you are truly spiritual, you are truly non-interested in material stuff, whatever material means, because it's not clear what would be the opposite of material. So why do that? Why would anyone in their sane mind trade something useful that can improve the quality of their experience in a very pragmatic and real way in exchange for a story, for telling themselves a story about their identity, a story that its purpose is to make this person feel special? So there is a craving to feel special. Yes, this is probably true. There is a desire to feel special. This desire to feel special is so strong that we are willing to do specific actions that make no sense, like let's say abandoning all our possessions, just in order to tell ourselves a story about how special we are because we did this. But we are actually giving away a healthy attachment in exchange for an unhealthy attachment, because then we get trapped into the story. What do we have to do every day to maintain that story, to maintain that illusion that we are special? It's a lot of work potentially. Every day you have to make some efforts to be disciplined, to do certain things just to maintain this story. And every day you have to worry that someone is going to attack your story. Someone is going to come with arguments and show you that it makes no sense or it's wrong. And you have to defend your story. You have to defend this false sense of identity you have created through made up stories. And usually you have also done actions that are probably not good for you in order to create or defend those stories. All these probably to feel special. Now, I'm not saying that it's only to feel special. There may be other causes, but for sure, feeling special is one of them. So just to feel special, we are going to build those intricate stories about how by doing certain things, including non-attachment and renunciation to basic things like property and health and money, by renouncing those things which are useful, so non-attachment of the useful, we are going to get ourselves heavily attached to the useless, to a story we fabricated, a story about our identity, a story about how we are, what we are, why we are so great, why we are so special. And any story is good. So one could argue that he's amazing because he's the emperor, and one could argue he's amazing because he has renounced everything and other people are greedy. So, but he's not, because he has renounced everything. So that makes him better. That makes him more special. In some way, the common denominator of all those stories is that they make you believe that you are more special. It's really about this. So either by being more powerful, or by being more rich, or by being more renunciate, or by being more meditating more, whatever it's going to be, by being more spiritual. By doing those things, we basically want to feel more special. So this is the real desire, the real unhealthy desire, the desire to build a story around ourselves, a story around our identity, the story of our identity, the story of what we are, to build this story and then fight for this story, defend this story at all costs, get extremely attached to that story and confuse this story with what we are, and potentially be willing to die for that story. If our story is that we are brave, we could potentially be willing to die for that story. Or any story really, but sure, people are often willing to die for their story, especially their story of identity. So this will be the fetter 8 in Buddhism, I think. The other one is fetter 4 and 5, is the desire, so it's the judgment. So we judge reality. We look at reality and we compare with an imagined reality through a judgment and a story. And of course, the judgment is always better. So it's like, it should have been different as in better. It could have been different as in better. So we always compare reality with a story, with an imagined reality of how things should have been, how things could have been. And of course, we are always disappointed. This is the desire. Whereas the identity thing, the attachment, I think most attachments are really to identity, the real one, the one that are truly problematic. So we just end up being attached to this story because the identity is just an idea, is really a set of stories that define what we are. Of course, there is a real identity. I mean, the point of view is a real identity. So I will always see the world through this point of view. I will not swap places with any of you guys. So each one of us will see the world through their point of view. That is not going to change. And sure, if we want to call it identity, we can call it identity. We can call it point of view. We can call it perspective. We can call it sub-reality, mini-reality, whatever. We can call it whatever we want, but it's an objective fact. Those are just words to describe something factual. There is a point of view. I mean, there are many points of view, and we each have one. There is not a single point of view. There are many perspectives. But this doesn't come with any ideas. I mean, no one can attack your perspective. There is no need to defend your perspective. What does that even mean? It's just an angle. Just like when I move the camera, there is going to be a different angle. I never feel the need to defend that angle against criticism or against other people, or to say that this angle is better than that other angle, or this is the superior angle. They are just angles. I mean, we can use words, of course, because we need to use words to explain things, but those are just angles. All there is angles, perspectives, point of views. They don't come with any sort of connotation. They're not good angles and bad angles. They're not better angles and worse angles. They're not special angles and less special ones. They're just angles. So I happen to see the world through a specific angle. And of course, this angle has patterns. It has my name. I often hear my name. When people call me, they use my name. It's part of that angle. If I look at myself in the mirror, I see this body. And when I remember stuff, I kind of remember certain memories. I remember Giotto's memories, not someone else's memories. Sure, that's part of this point of view. It's part of this perspective. That's why we probably should set healthy boundaries around our body, around our possession, around our money, around our time, because we don't want other people to abuse those boundaries, because those things that are associated with the point of view will determine the quality of our experience through this point of view. So if someone tries to stab me, well, that's probably going to produce pain, and that's going to lower the quality of my experience through that point of view. If someone tries to steal my possession, that will also make this experience less good. But it's just a point of view. But then we build stories around this point of view. This point of view is unique. This point of view is better. This point of view is me. This point of view is special. This point of view is better. When we use the word point of view, of course, it makes a lot less sense. So usually we say identity, we say me. I am better. I am more special. I am more unique. I am more holy. I am smarter. I am richer. I am more successful. I am better. Or the opposite. I am worse. I am a failure. Whatever. Can be in both directions. Different people will build different kinds of stories. But those are stories. Those are stories we build around our identity, and we believe they are our identity. We build like a character, like a persona, like a mask. And then we feel that we have to defend it. If someone attacked those beliefs, attacked those stories, it feels like they are hurting us. They are attacking us, because we end up believing that we are those stories. We are those ideas. And all this for what? Because we are attached to the idea that we are special. But why do we need to be special? What exactly, why is it so important to believe that we are special? What exactly is it going to give us? Is it another story that maybe we can feel good temporarily by thinking we are special? But then if someone attacks the story or something happens that invalidates the story, then it's painful. Because, oh wait, maybe I'm not special. Or this person is more special than me. So it's difficult. There's always some tension. It's difficult to maintain this attachment all the time. It's a lot of effort. It's a lot of suffering. So why? Why do we need that story? Why is it so important to build those stories and live under the illusion that we are those stories, that those stories are our identity, and fight for those stories and do crazy things for those stories, even be willing to lose our life or possessions or our health? Why do we believe that it's worth losing everything over defending this story just to feel more special? Because it's just a story. The monk that spent all his day meditating, there is a reason why he's doing it. There is a desire behind it, or he would not be doing it. He's doing it because he thinks in some way that this is better. This is a better alternative. But why exactly is it a better alternative? Because it's not like a normal preference, like I prefer chocolate ice cream versus vanilla ice cream. There is no reason why, it's just personal preference. It's unlikely that someone actually prefers to just spend all the day meditating rather than doing something else, unless they tell themselves a story. They associate a meaning to it. They say, no, but by meditating, I'm doing something meaningful. I'm doing something important. I'm doing something that makes me better, that makes me special, that makes me unique. then they start to build identity. They start to build stories around identity, and they start to get attached to those stories. Of course, you can't feel good by believing nonsense, but it's kind of like choosing to feel good by believing an illusion. And it's also risky because the illusion can collapse, can shatter at any time. That's why we are so defensive around those stories of identity, that we care so much about defending those stories, because we believe that we are those stories. But those stories are just stories. They are not judgment stories, but they are, let's call them identity stories. Stories about who we are, what we are. And usually those stories make us feel special. Being special is also a story. So story can connect to other stories. So we build stories to protect other stories, to create new stories, to protect some stories. It's just stories. It's just like Santa Claus. At the end of the day, we don't know exactly what identity is. We know that for sure it's a point of view, but everything else is potentially just story. And there are things, of course, that are not just story. Like our body is there, and our body, we experience our body, and it's part of our day-to-day experience. So we should care about our body. But is our body us? I mean, when we were kids, we were different. And let's say when someone is 6 years old and when they are 40 and when they are 80, their body is completely different. It's not the same body. So the body changes. And when they die, the body is gone. And again, some people believe that there is an afterlife, some don't. It doesn't really matter. So we don't know exactly what identity is. We know that for sure there is its minimum common denominator is the point of view. We know that it can be objectively influenced by things like body, health, possessions, etc. The experience can be affected by this. And the rest is just stories. I mean, is our body us? Of course, it affects our experience, but is there some merit? Let's say someone is smart or successful, but it's mostly because of their DNA. I mean, they could very well have been born stupid. And it's thanks to their parents, really. But the parents probably had good DNA also. And so they inherited it themselves and all the way back to the Big Bang. So sure, someone that is healthy or smart or tall or beautiful can just say that he's lucky. Now, I don't know if he wants to tell himself a story that this is him, this is his identity. I mean, why not? It's not as bad as the other stories. So they're all stories, but some stories are better than others. The story where you end up doing absurd things, like for example, giving away your possessions or maybe even losing your health or risking your life, which are real things in some way that actually affect your experience. If you are willing to give away those just to build yourself a story of how special you are by doing this, that's kind of crazy. So of course one can choose. I mean, the goal here is it's not necessarily even to remove the stories, because those stories can also say it's to recognize them as story. So when someone say I'm smart and successful, if they truly believe it, it's dangerous. If they truly believe it's their identity, it's something unbreakable, unshakable, it's truly them. But if they realize it's a story, and once in a while they like to indulge in telling themselves that story, and it's a nice story, like Santa Claus is a nice story. The issue is not in the story of Santa Claus. The issue is in believing Santa Claus is real. So Santa Claus is a nice story. You can tell the story of Santa Claus. You can tell the story of your success. You can tell the story of the smart things you did. You can tell those stories, but you should remember that those are stories. The problem is when you confuse those stories with the reality. Now you think you are those things. You think those stories have become you, and you're willing to fight, potentially even lose your life over those stories. You will feel bad every time someone attacks those stories. You feel they're after you, but they are just pointing out that the story doesn't make sense. But you are so invested in the story that you feel you have to defend the story at all costs. So this is the real attachment. The real attachment is about identity. Is being attached to the idea of being something. The idea of attaching our identity to a specific story. This is the real attachment. It's the attachment to identity.